a little hard to navigate it all. Okay, so you're right, Rebecca. Yeah, I'm full press hooked on 3 from here on out. I was super excited to get another monitor. Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started, everybody. So it is 2:01 and we're going to dive into our March. I almost said, no, it's May. I almost said the wrong one. Can't believe it's May. We are going to get started with our May Local Procurement Colorado call. And thank you all so very much for joining us today as we have a nice selection of panelists who are joining us, a couple guest speakers as well. And as always, our lovely culinary feature too, to talk about items that are grown in Colorado that are available within the seasons. So today, what we will be talking about is all about marketing your farm to school program. So we're going to have a guest speaker, Rainey Wickstrom from the Healthy People Project. She has supported the work that we've done at Nourish Colorado for over 10 years now and helping our school food professionals find fun, unique, and engaging ways to really promote all the good hard work that you're doing in your school meal programs. And then we also have some Colorado leaders who from around the state are also really working to promote their school meal programs, specifically the farm to school side. And again, we're trying to show a nice spectrum of school leaders here, some who are just getting started with their farm to school programs and others who have been doing it for quite some time to really start giving you more guidance and ideas as to where to start your journey when it comes to farm to school and promoting your program and getting that good word out because good news travels fast and we always want to try to share the good that you all are doing because we've seen it across the board. We go to school districts and, sometimes the parents have no clue that you're buying local products. And it's so important to make sure that you are sharing that and promoting that because we know how much work it does take for that to actually happen. So shout it from the rooftops. So we'll be talking about that today and I'll have Rainey introduce our panelists when that time comes. And then our culinary topic is all about greens. So it is May. This is a great time for all of our nice, tender, leafy greens to start growing. They actually love the weather that we're having right here with this nice, cool, cloudy, kind of misty. It's almost reminiscent of like Ireland in a way with just how like tepid the air is. So it's perfect climate right now for all of our leafy greens to be growing. And we're going to be really showing you some fun new leafy greens to try out, a nice little recipe as always, and some fun culinary tips and tricks as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Rainey to talk about who is joining us today and to introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Jess. I'm Rainey Wickstrom, and I'm a school meal marketing consultant, and I've had the pleasure of working with Nourish, formerly LiveWell, for about the past decade. And if you really want some ideas on how to promote your program, this session is definitely for you. This is all about how to promote farm to school. And one of the things we look for in promoting school meal programs is what appeals to people, what's exciting, what's interesting. And farm to school is definitely something very interesting to your communities. We are so lucky today to be joined by 4 food service team members from across Colorado. We have someone who serves as few as 120 students and who is brand new to this work, to another team member who serves as many as 23,000. And there's a lot of diversity in this panelist group today, based on size of school or district, location, the types of farm to school opportunities that are available based on region, and even the types of marketing channels and opportunities available. We really hope that you leave today with a handful of good ideas or great ideas that you can use to promote your efforts. And joining us today, starting down here in the southwestern corner of Colorado, is Krista Garand, who is the coordinator of student nutrition, and her district serves 5,000 students. And Krista is one of our pioneers in farm to school. If you've been on any webinars, you've seen that Krista's been featured locally, in the state, and even nationally for the work that she's done. Krista, can you just give us a wave? Fantastic. Moving over to Pagosa Peak Open School. This is our smallest school represented today. It's a public charter school in Pagosa Springs. And Lexi's program, not only did she start her program a year ago, a USDA school meal program, she also started Farm to School at the same time, and she started her Farm to School promotions. So we're going to hear from Lexi, who's at this little small K-8 charter school. Hi, Lexi. And then we'll move over here to Inglewood, where we have Katie Cossett. And Inglewood, by the way, is a suburb of Denver. And Katie is the Director of Nutrition Services, and she serves 2,500 students. And Katie's really interesting because she is a master at enlisting help for her program. She told me that she's already had 20 interns this year and currently has 4 that she's using to promote Farm to School and other things in her nutrition program. Did I get that right, Katie? Okay, there's a nod from Katie. All right, and then finally we have Greeley, which is north of Denver. This is a really rich agricultural area. Hi, Rebecca. And Rebecca Robbins is the nutrition and menu specialist. And this is the largest district we have represented today with 23,000 students. Greeley was one of the forerunners in Farm to School. And something that Rebecca told me she's really proud of is they go all out on Colorado Proud Day. Something very interesting about them as well, they have their own chili roaster. So we're going to hear more from each of them. So welcome everyone. We're so glad that you're here today. And now I'm going to turn it over to you. And Jess, can you go to the next slide? Okay, great. So what we're interested in hearing today on this particular slide is, how did you get started with Farm to School? What were some of the products you purchased? And what have students loved? And I think it's fair to start with Lexi since she's brand new with this and it's really fresh in her mind. Go ahead, Lexi.
So we started the school, Pagosa Peak Open School has only been around for 4 years. But local food procurement and education through place is so high up on the values of our charter school. So it made a lot of sense for us to start our food program, but immediately jump into Farm to School and trying to get as many local foods as we possibly could at the very beginning. So are we just answering the first question or do you want me to go?
You know what, we're going to have about 2 minutes per panelist. So go ahead, you have about 2 minutes to answer all 3 of them.
Okay. So our first products that we've purchased have been onions and carrots from one of our teachers who is a Colorado Proud farmer, which is very lucky. So their farm is already closely related with our school. So far that's all we've been able to purchase since we started our school year, started our program, hadn't been able to start working with other farmers quite yet. But onions, I'm sure a lot of you know, it's really hard to sell kids on. We have a chunk of kids at our school who say they're allergic to them, even though they very much just don't like them. And it was amazing to see that the second that we told the kids, hey, these onions are from Southern Roots Farm, where you've gone and grown food before. This is where you've already, this teacher. And they were just excited and they were ready to eat it. And they were like, oh my gosh, these are the best onions ever. And it's like, yeah, they are the best onions ever. But also, you're liking onions. And so that was really huge and super exciting. And so now we're trying to expand our Farm to School program. Maybe someday we'll be as successful as Chris does. You're just right over the border county and just looking at you with awe. So that's how we got started, and hopefully we'll continue to grow a little bit.
Thank you, Lexi. Thank you for the great onion story. I love that. While we're talking about Krista and we're in the same location, let's just move over to you, Krista. How did you get started? What were some of the products you purchased and what have kids loved?
So our start actually goes way back to 2004. And so our first purchase was actually microgreens. So I had taken over as food service director and accidentally stumbled on an email about a local entity that was willing to subsidize purchases of these microgreens. And so that was actually our beginning. And so I called that person up and said, do we still have this anonymous donor? And they said yes. And so we started doing the microgreens. And then slowly, started working with a few different farmers, purchasing lettuce, carrots, tomatoes, very small purchases, which we would feature just on one salad bar at a school. This was 2004, so we weren't purchasing enough to go to every school when we would buy. So we would feature those products just on a single salad bar. And then we ventured into, I landed another unique situation with a grass finished beef. That ended up being a great deal for us and for the beef producer, since I could take the ground beef, which they couldn't move, and they were selling the high-end steaks. So it was a great relationship. And then that was our next big thing that we got into, was beef. And so we've always done local beef since then. But that was our kickoff to local beef, was back in about 2005 or 6, I think that was. And the students actually loved everything that we were doing. And then, of course, we just sort of built on that over the years.
Yeah, Krista, that's great. And I super love the story about where you told me that the kids notice if something's not local, they can really tell the difference.
Yeah, their words are, what's wrong with the tomatoes? We're not serving local tomatoes. So we go from these like super sweet, just incredible cherry tomatoes. And when those run out and we start buying, fresh packed tomatoes or tomatoes from whatever purveyor, they're like, what happened to the tomatoes?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Rebecca, let's move up to Northern Colorado. How did you get started?
So our farm to school program started about 13 years ago in the 2008-2009 school year. We got started by purchasing a crop of cherry tomatoes from Wise Acre Farms, which is just north of Fort Lupton. We purchased the crop for $239. So it was small but mighty, because it fueled our farm to school programs pretty significantly. We expanded from there, and I don't exactly know the year, but to give everyone a reference, our peak year for spending for local foods has been about $1 million. And that was the year that we, like Krista, started including some local ground beef, particularly for our hamburger patties. We still purchase a few things just in smaller quantities due to the pandemic. But over the years, we've done lots of animal proteins, chicken, beef. We've done buffalo for our buffalo enchiladas that we offered, I think it was 2019. The years have gotten away from me a little bit with the pandemic, but we did a Colorado Proud burrito, which had buffalo in it. We only cook with local sunflower oil in our central production kitchen. And then we have purchased cornmeal, flour, beans, lots of fresh produce. As Rainey mentioned in the beginning of the call, we do have a chili roaster. So we often in the fall roast our own chili peppers, which go into our green chili sauce and our enchilada sauce. And cherry tomatoes, husked corn on the cob. We end up partnering oftentimes with student groups such as baseball teams, etc. And I believe we pay them to husk the corn. So a great partnership there. And in regards to the students loving our food, we've never had any complaints for the local food. I as Krista also mentioned, really think the kids can tell the difference when things are local, especially apples. We get lots of apples from Wacky Apples over on the Western Slope. And the kids really loved that Colorado Proud burrito with the buffalo in it, as I mentioned, that had local tortillas, our homemade enchilada sauce, and then the local buffalo as well, and cheese. I think we got that donated from LoProCO. So so we love our farm to school program. It's awesome.
That's awesome. And I think you used the word epic when you described how the kids felt about the buffalo burrito, was it?
I think so. We got a lot of positive feedback. Once we're back to, scratch cooking fully again, I think we'll try to do that again.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, Katie, over to you in Inglewood. How did you get started?
I probably started buying from local manufacturers before I started venturing off into farms, because being in a urban, suburban setting, we don't really have connections with farmers as easily. They're not, in our daily world so much, and finding them it seemed a little scary. But I got connected with a food hub that runs into Denver once a week. And that's been a really beneficial partnership because they are kind of my middleman. I wear every hat in my small district. It's probably most of you do as well. So I don't have a lot of time to try and source them, but he sources them for me and delivers them to the sites, which has been great. We've been able to have variety, and I have a one contact point. So that's been super helpful. So we started with like a farm of the month program. We buy local as we can, but we try to do something special and different for our farm of the month deal when Palisade peaches are available, or watermelons, or cantaloupes, potatoes. So we started small, but we really wanted to market and pinpoint things that we're doing local at a smaller level. We've purchased all kinds of produce, and even when there really wasn't a lot, they had potatoes, and I was like, we've done potatoes, but they actually made them into potato chips for us. So it was like a little treat. I wouldn't say it was anything reimbursable, but it was kind of a fun little thing for the kids to get. And it just so happened to fall the week before we closed for the pandemic. So maybe it was something fun before everything crazy has happened. But the kids really loved the Palisade peaches. That's not something we get all the time. So it was exciting for them. And they were also organic, and the kids learned about organic. So they were even more enthralled with trying them. I really loved the watermelon because it was picked that morning. It was delivered, and some of the watermelon was yellow on the inside. So that was a fun little education thing with that not all watermelon is pink. So we've still kept it up for the most part this year, and we've focused our more energy on marketing efforts. So that's probably why I'm here today. But yeah, that's about it.
All right. Thank you, Katie. Well, there's definitely a theme running through it, this idea of starting small, but it becoming mighty. And it seems like each one of you have done something, whether it's microgreens or the tiniest thing, it's evolved into something, onions, much bigger. So hats off to all of you. I'm going to turn it back to Jess, who's going to move us into our culinary side, and then we'll swing back to more questions. Go ahead, Jess.
Nice. Thank you, Rainey. And thanks to our panelists as well. This is wonderful. And I love, honestly, the use of onions. That is such a great item that is available year round in our state. It's one of those crops that you can get in the fall and the winter months. And I always like to tell kids that when onions make you cry, it's tears of joy because they're so delicious. So I love the use of the onions, and everything else as well that you all have shared is just great feedback, and the use of local manufacturers. I mean, there's so many different ways to really get into farm to school. It doesn't have to be directly from the farm to the school. There's lots of different avenues for you all, and I love that you're exploring and utilizing those avenues. So now we get to talk about the leafy greens that we have and that we grow in our state. So when it comes to leafy greens, there's nearly 1,000 different species of leafy greens out there. So one thing that you have seen from the previous calls is that we really want you to start exploring different varieties as well. So don't just always buy that iceberg lettuce or the romaine lettuce. There are so many different varieties of lettuces out there that you can really start exposing your students, your customers, to many different types of leafy greens, and they all have different flavor profiles and uses. The best thing about greens, though, is that you really can interchange them. You can actually grill your romaine, like romaine lettuce, typically Caesar salads, typically raw. Grilled romaine, I mean, we might not be doing this at schools, but it could work at home, is just fantastic. It's one of those like mind-blowing experiences when you actually have grilled romaine and you're like, wait, cooked lettuce doesn't make any sense, but it's actually really quite delicious. So we want you to really open and be expansive with the different ways that you're serving these different leafy greens. And another thing is that for some of these leafy greens, especially things like Boston bib lettuce or even romaine lettuce, you can use those as a substitution for bread or tortillas. So like lettuce wraps, you typically obviously find those with lettuce. I tend to do this at home quite often, as I'll make myself a nice little, lettuce wrap filling and just have my romaine lettuce, because I don't really buy bib lettuce too often. I should, to be able to really enjoy it. And I've also used things like a red leaf lettuce when I don't have any romaine lettuce as a substitute for that little tortilla wrap that I'm looking to make. So it works. We really just want you to be flexible and open to exploring some of the different options. Like what Krista mentioned with the microgreens. That's fantastic. I thought it was quite awesome that like her first purchase was a micro purchase of microgreens. It was just really quite cute. And I think it's another way to, again, just continue exposing our customers, our students to all these different types of lettuces that are out there. And in Colorado, we actually, as I mentioned, springtime is prime growing season for these tender leafy greens. When we start moving more into the summer months, that's when you're going to see things like kale and chard being more readily available because they're a little bit more of those tougher leafy greens. So right now, prime season to get those leafy greens if you're working with local farmers who are growing outdoors. And then you'll also see that they start planting leafy greens again as the summer comes to a close, because these tender leafy greens like that cooler weather, and they also will grow in the fall as well. The cool thing about leafy greens though is that these really can be available year round as well. So we have seen school districts, and I'm not going to call out Krista, but I'm calling out Krista because one of their schools, they actually have an indoor hydroponic growing system that's growing lettuce, and that is going into the school meal program, and they have that lettuce available year round. And when there was a big romaine lettuce recall that happened a couple years ago, Krista didn't have to worry about that because they knew where that lettuce was coming from. And we've seen other school districts do this where the Future Farmers of America students are actually getting funding to set up hydroponic growing systems and growing lettuce year round and bringing that back into the school meal program. So we love this. And honestly, if we can get our leafy greens year round and maybe even fresh herbs because of some of these indoor growing systems, it's a requirement. Most school districts are serving lettuce almost every day, especially when we had salad bars. Hopefully those are coming back in the future. We will see. This is a really great way to just continue exposing your students to all the different types of lettuces and really shortening up those supply chains as well, and giving kids that ability to learn what it takes to grow something and then actually consume it in the meal program. So I'm going to stop sharing and then show our first culinary video here with Chef Fernando so that you all can learn all about the different varieties of leafy greens that you can see. Oh, let me make sure I get sound. That's always important. All right, I'm gonna play.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is your culinary session, and this month we're gonna be talking about greens and lettuces because there's more than iceberg. There's so many things happening in Colorado. It's more than spring right now. So a lot of things popping up and lettuces growing all over the state. There's also a lot of products that are available year-round because we grow them hydroponically. So what we talk about today, you can find in the summer or year-round. So let's get to it. We're gonna be focusing on lettuces, and there are 4 categories of lettuces. And the first one that I wanna talk about is the crisp lettuces. This one, let's begin with romaine. This is probably the most popular one. If you order a Caesar salad, this is the one you're gonna get. It's really crisp. You can use it in a sandwich. It's gonna give you that nice crunch. One of my favorite salads, and again, available, we grow it here in Colorado. For the hydroponically ones, we have a crisp lettuce. It's really pretty and attractive. It's gonna make your salads really stand out. It's so cool looking. This is another type of romaine. It's a red leaf romaine, again, grown hydroponically, but it is so cool looking. And again, look at all your different salads and how it's gonna look. Your salads will be so pretty. The other one that I wanna share with you is the bib lettuce, and it's a type of Boston lettuce. This is the one that you want to use if you're making cups, lettuce cups. It's going to look so nice and pretty, and there you go. Now, the other category that we have is the peppery, and for the peppery ones, these are the spicy ones. They really have a kick to it. They really add something. Here, we got some microgreens, and there's so many types of different microgreens. This is called a rainbow microgreen. Look at all those colors. Imagine what it will look like on your dishes. So much color. This one, it's arugula, and it's one of my favorite ones. So spicy. I use it in my scrambled eggs in the mornings, in my eggs, sandwiches, etc. If you have want to introduce it to your kids, in French it's called rocket, so you can sell it like that to your kids. Tell them, today we're gonna serve you some rocket. It's great. The other one, the next one, is the mild one. And for the mild one, we have some spinach. Popeye, remember, for those muscles, packed full of nutrients. There's also mâché and tatsoi, but these are mild, which means you can use them in so many different applications, from salads, pizzas, stir fries, soups, etc. And the last one, it's really the bitter lettuces. And for that, I have an endive right here. Look at this guy. And I also have a radicchio. It comes from Italy, but these are really bitter. I wouldn't really make a salad of only endive or radicchio. You want to mix them with other greens. Or if you grill and braise them, you can cook them as well. You are gonna just really fall in love with them. What do we want to serve them with? Usually we serve them with a dressing or a vinaigrette. And that's what we're gonna be talking about next. Hello, and welcome everybody.
All right, so that was Chef Fernando sharing all of the awesome different varieties of leafy greens that we have and categorizing them for you all. And I'll turn it back over to Rainey for more answers from our panelists.
Wow, I love that video, Jess. That was so fun. And thanks for the tip on lettuce wraps. That's got to be on my menu for this week. Speaking of videos, right here on this slide, this little one that says Farm to School was produced by someone who's on our panel today. Inglewood produced this video. If we have time, we're going to show it at the end. And if not, we'll send it out to you. But here's a couple promotions that some of you have done. Lexi got this article in the Pagosa Springs newspaper. And then Krista's really good at featuring her farmers on her website, getting information about them, pictures, bio. So here's a couple things. And now what we're going to do is we're going to hear from you. What have you done to promote your farm to school and what has worked well? And I think I'm going to go ahead and start with Rebecca.
Thanks, Rainey. All right, so I'm going to look at my notes while we're talking so I don't forget anything. Probably like most, if not all of you, we have promoted on social media. Our administrative assistant, Logan, manages all of our social media, and he has a graphic design experience, is an absolutely credible graphic design mind. And so he puts together incredible social media and marketing material and posts. So we do promote our farm to school program on social media. We also, when we have salad bars, right now we don't have them because of the pandemic, but when we do have them, we have salad bar signs. We have little identifying cards that are in a little, what's it called, plastic sleeve, the little card. We have the, Colorado Proud logo identifying if something on the salad bar is from one of our local farmers. We also decorate our kitchens pretty extensively with posters and signs promoting where the products are that we're serving on the menu, where they, what farm and where that farm is located in regards to Greeley. And especially for Colorado Proud School Meal Day, we've really, like Rainey said, we kind of go all out for that September celebration. And in the past few years, not this year, but last year and the previous 3 years, we were working with an AmeriCorps Vista. We had one in our department, and that individual was always very involved in our marketing for our farm to school program. And so we had 4 different individuals, but they all developed variations of similar posters that were always super beautiful. And so those were always hung up in our cafeterias. And then sometimes for our fresh fruit and vegetable program, when we send out nutrition education materials, if the fresh fruit or veggie that we're serving is local, on the nutrition education materials that goes along with that day's menu, we'll put the Colorado Proud logo on that education material and identify what farm it's coming from and why farm to school is important, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Rebecca. And your little identifier that you talked about that describes the item, we're going to have that on, I think, on the next slide. You'll see it. I think those are really special. Those labels are just so important. So thank you for that. And you did it. I was going to say we have 1 to 2 minutes and you nailed it. Thank you, Rebecca. So Katie, how about you? Can you tell us what you've been doing to promote your program?
Well, we do a lot of the same things Rebecca does. We have identifier cards. We have posters in our cafeterias. We actually create a soundbite to be read on the morning announcements, the days that we know we're going to be serving the items or when they've gotten delivered, so the kids can know to look for it in the lunchroom. We also produce a infographic that goes into parent newsletters. We really have seen more success going in the site-based parent newsletters versus us doing stuff in like social media or on our website. And then we obviously produce videos. We focused this year on what a value of the school lunch is, and we're trying to hit on different values like cost, time, nutrition, connections. But our first video was farm to school and how we purchase local. So we were trying different methods to reach people. So, you know, hopefully they read it the first time, but more than likely you have to keep sharing it in different communication modes in order for them to really take in the information.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much. All right. And Lexi, let's hear from you about some of the things you've done to promote. Looks like you're still on mute. There you go.
Sorry, my screen mouse froze, so I couldn't unmute myself. Yeah, so we do some of the same things other people do. Our school doesn't have a giant social media presence right now. However, we live in a town with a giant newspaper presence. Everybody in our town gets the newspaper every Thursday. So the newspaper is really awesome if we're talking to just the general audience and letting the entire city know about our efforts. But we are a strong advocate of teaching through our kids to our parents. Like, we send newsletter out at the end of every newsletter. There's like a little snippet about what we're doing at the school, but we don't know how many parents actually see that. We share on the families page and maybe get a couple of likes. Don't know how many people are reading that either. But what works really well for us are things similar to what other people are doing, such as putting our signs on. Since this is our first year, we actually don't have a cafeteria. We have carts that we wheel into the classrooms, and we have these plexiglass signs that if we are doing something that has a local food in it. So when we were bringing out those onions from Miss Bruno's farm, we were able to put that on every single class's cart so that when the kids are coming to pick up their food, they're the ones who are reading it, seeing it, practicing those skills, but also understanding. And so we do that with our local food and have like a little star of this is where it came from, you know, it's right down the street. Yeah, and we do a lot of tasty challenges and things like that to also to feature our local foods, get kids to understand them so that then the kids come home and are talking to their parents about how cool it was that they had these foods. And we do hear back from the parents that when we do those things, the kids do come back excited and they're like, oh, we ate this and it was from here and it was awesome. And so that's kind of what we have done so far. That has worked pretty well for us in our small little family school.
All right. Thank you, Lexi. That's great. Well, there's definitely a theme again running through it. I love this idea of morning announcements, Katie, where the kids actually read what's on the menu and feature. That's great. The newspaper, using the newspaper because it looms large. All of you are doing some level, I think, of taste testing and identifying the local items. How about you, Krista? What's working for you and what are you doing to promote your program?
So we do some version of the same things everybody has talked about. So I'll mention a few things that weren't mentioned. I do think I want to say that sometimes when we talk about marketing, it seems really overwhelming. And so I think it's just important to know that there's a lot of things that you can do that don't cost any money and don't take a lot of time, like using your webpage and reaching out to your local newspaper. Those kinds of things can make a big impact and they don't really cost any money. So even something small to let people know what you're doing is really important. So I think when we look at marketing, sometimes we think we have to reach this huge audience, and really if we can just reach some people to know what we're doing, it's better than not reaching anybody. So the things that we do that haven't been mentioned is we have a print calendar. And so we feature on our print calendar whenever we're going to have local foods. We actually created these little icons to match up to the different farms. And so we would put those little icons all over the calendar whenever we were going to serve from those farms, so people would know what days that was happening. We also did some events where we brought farmers in to talk to kids. I find that the marketing that we do to parents has a lot of impact. Our kids know what we're doing, but they don't always go home and tell their family. So some of the marketing that we do that targets parents are like our big Thanksgiving lunch where we serve the entire community. We buy thousands of pounds of local food for that event. And so that really gets targeted towards the parents so that they know this is just one meal that's part of what we do with our farm to school program. We also did an event where we were getting we had a local farmer who was milling his own wheat and making a pancake mix for us. So we were doing some pancake breakfasts where we invited parents to come have breakfast with their kids. And then we invited that farmer to the breakfast. And so we went around to tables talking about our farm to school program. And he talked about, how he grows and mills his own wheat and how he came up with that formula for the pancakes. And that made a really big impact too. So anytime we can invite parents to come have a meal that includes local food, we don't really have to put that out anywhere. It's happening right on the site, and those parents tell their friends and say, oh, did you know that they're doing this at school? And that word of mouth actually becomes another marketing tool for us. So I think those are probably the big ones but everything else, we use social media, we use our paper, we use district e-news, our Facebook pages, all that kind of stuff too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It just seems like kind of the theme here too is just start small, as Krista said, with something. It doesn't have to be big, just like starting with the microgreens or the onions, just having the marketing go along with the actual farm to school effort. Just seems like those two things can run in tandem, and it's something your communities get really excited. So thank you for all those amazing, amazing ideas. And Chris, I know one thing you told me on the call the other day is if you don't tell people about this, they're just not going to know. It's really important that you let people know. So thank you for those great things. Next up on our next slide, what I want to hear from you is what would you suggest to someone just getting started with farm to school and they want to promote it? And we have about 45 seconds here for each of you to give us a tip. We're going to probably 2 tips, one here and one later. So let's work backwards, going with Krista. I know we just finished with you, but.
Yeah, I guess my one tip would be to do something rather than nothing. So even if it's small, using your webpage or signage or your menu, doing something, we all have some ability to reach families with automated call systems, our web pages, like whatever you can do something. And it doesn't have to be something that costs a lot of money, like making posters or banners. It could be just signage and making sure that your kitchens have the information they need to be promoting what they're doing, because they get really busy. So as long as we have the tools available for them to put the signs up, then it happens. And so even the smallest things, as long as you're trying to do something to get the word out, because like Rainey said, we can do all these fabulous things in our programs, but if we don't tell anybody, then nobody knows we're doing it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Krista. All right, Katie, how about you? What's a tip you would give to someone who's getting started with their promotions?
Well, start small. Don't try and do too much all at once and like throw a bunch of information out. Be strategic in your planning, and think ahead, be able to plan it out. What's worked really well for us is using dietetic interns or using students at nearby universities that might be doing some graphic design, or even students within your own building that are taking those types of classes, because it's fun for them, it's educational for them, and they're kind of taking that workload off of you.
Those are great ideas. Love them all. Rebecca, how about what tips would you offer?
I would say to use multiple avenues for marketing, and know your audiences. So for instance, with Lexi, her town may not use Facebook, but she knows that they use the newspaper. And I think that's a really great example. For us, our kids in our district don't use Facebook much anymore, but they use Instagram and TikTok. So we still have, I think, some work to get there, to have a presence for Instagram and TikTok, but we're getting there. And then our parents like Facebook. So we're just trying to, target all these different avenues to make sure that we get the largest population that we can, to know that, we're doing good things and serving healthy local food and supporting the community.
Fabulous. Thank you, Rebecca. That's great. Lexi, I was intrigued by something you told me, which was about starting in the classroom. So is that one of your tips?
Yeah, that was, I was going to echo Katie's and say that getting your students involved in what they're learning, making signs is such a cool idea. We haven't had kids do that yet, I don't think, and we might have to get started on that. But yeah, just getting the kids so excited about things, going into the classroom, doing the tasty challenges, bringing farmers into the school once we're allowed to do that again, knock on wood. I think my biggest thing is just making those really strong connections between the farmers and the students. And then it's a nice little trifecta of farmers, students, food. So that would be my advice.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. So I love it. Start small, know your audiences, just do something, and get the kids involved. Great ideas. Thank you, guys. We're going to turn it back over to Jess, who's going to go back into the culinary side, and we're going to hear about vinaigrette. So Jess, take it away.
Nice. Thank you very much, Rainey. Okay, so before we watch the next video where we start getting a little bit nerdy and getting into the weeds with the science behind vinaigrettes, I have a poll question for you all, because we would like to know, and this is completely anonymous, so there's no judging if you don't know the answer, what ingredient in a vinaigrette causes the greens to wilt? Do you think it's the acid? Do you think it's the oil? Is it the salt? Or is it the spices? And I'll give you all a second to fill it out, and we'll see, and then we'll get the answer. This is fascinating. Right. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. Here's the results that we've got so far, and we'll go to the video and we'll see what Chef Fernando tells us is the answer.
All right, so for those of you who may not have known, the answer is the oil. And let's think about it real quick for a second. When the greens, when the lettuces are out in the field and they're growing, they're exposed to the elements. So they develop a waxy layer that really protects them from the rain. When you add vinegar, which is a water-based ingredient, it really doesn't damage or wilt your greens. This waxy layer though, if you add oil, it allows it to go in and starts wilting your greens. So it is the oil that really wilts your salads. Today, we're gonna dive into the 3 different types of dressings, beginning with your classic vinaigrette. And your classic vinaigrette, it's an emulsion which you're combining oil and an acid. Then you also have your mayo dressings, which it's an emulsion, but you are adding egg yolks to bind it. And the last one is your dairy dressings. For example, who doesn't love ranch? It's the infamous ranch dressing that everybody loves. For today, we're gonna be focusing on the vinaigrettes and the why you wanna bind them, all right? Because you don't have to bind it, you don't have to emulsify it, you can just grab a bulb, add your greens, add your vinegar, your oil, but you're not gonna get the same results because after a few minutes, you're gonna get a pool of vinegar on the bottom, and that's not very nice. So you have to use a binder. And what are some binders? egg yolks, honey, and we also have some mustard. And how do these work? These ingredients have on each end of their molecules, one is attracted to water and the other one is attracted to oil. So when you add those binders, it really holds your dressing together and it's gonna make it so much better. And we're gonna get a little nerdy. We did some experiments for you. And what I have right here is the same recipe. It's a balsamic vinaigrette. One, we added mustard and the other one we didn't. We shook them, we mixed them about 30 minutes ago. And for this one, if you can see, the oil it rose to the top and the vinegar is on the bottom. It's not holding together, it's not emulsified. While this one, again, same ingredients, but we added mustard. And after 30 minutes, you can see it is still bound together, okay? You can see it very clearly. It's not separating. And that's what your binder will do, okay? To show you even a little further, we made a couple different salads. One salad, we just mixed oil and vinegar and we tossed the greens. And look at this one. Can you see on the bottom how much vinegar and oil fell to the bottom? And look at the dressed greens. They're looking okay, but your sauce, it's all on the bottom. It really didn't stick to it. It just fell right off. This one though, we mixed it with the dressing as an emulsifier. It's really shiny, it's really pretty looking, and we didn't really get that much on the bottom. As you can tell, the dressing adhered to the leaves. And that's what you really want, and this is why you want to do your emulsifiers. All right, it's time to make our Italian vinaigrette. And I have my mise en place ready. I have my olive oil, I have some cider vinegar, and in order to make it Italian, I really have to use some Italian herbs. I got some basil, some oregano, a little paprika, garlic and onion powder, salt, pepper, a tiny amount of sugar, and my binder. Remember, we gotta bind it so it holds it together. I got some Dijon mustard, and it's gonna be quite simple. I love this vinaigrette because we can use it in so many different applications, not just your salads. You can use it to marinate some meats and roast vegetables. If you've never done that, try it. I think you're gonna fall in love even more with your veggies. So let's make our vinaigrette. And that's it. As simple as blending it really quickly. And here we have our delicious Italian vinaigrette. If you don't have a blender like this, you can whisk it, but it really takes no time.
Awesome. As you all can see, we have, filming at home. So the doggies always like to make an appearance and choose to scrape their beds right in the middle of filming. We get one shot. So a couple little quick tips and tricks for you all. These PowerPoints will all be shared after the call, so you will have access to this as well. And just when it comes to making your own vinaigrettes, it's a very simple ratio. It's 3 parts of oil to 1 part of acid. So that would be 3 cups of oil to 1 cup of acid. You're going to end up with 1 quart of vinaigrette. And then you can really choose the emulsifier that you're using, the other flavors that you're using, and really have fun with your vinaigrettes. Also, if you are a school food service operation or even at home, if it makes sense and you have the skills, the capacity, the correct equipment, it's actually cheaper to buy whole lettuces versus already pre-cut. You do get longer shelf life out of it as well when you buy that whole lettuce. However, you really need to make sure that this makes sense for your operation and your teams and your staff's capacity as well. But we do recommend considering it. Another thing, because I do this all the time, is I add my greens to my burritos. And I find that if I don't chop them up in advance, when I'm taking a bite of that burrito, the lettuce comes all the way out and it hits my chin and it's a little hot burning lettuce. So start chopping them up before you add them to your burritos. It'll be a lot easier to eat. And then smoothies, add spinach to them. You can do a small amount and it doesn't change the color, or you could do a lot and make a lean green smoothie machine, or even something called like the Hulk, and have a nice green smoothie that does not have the taste of spinach. So hope you enjoy those, and I will pass it back off to Rainey for some of our final takeaways.
All right, so I wanted to just check in with all of you and see if there's any other tips you want to share or something you're going to take away from our discussion today. So Lexi, is there another tip you want to share with the audience? And or is there something you're taking away today, whether it's lettuce or promoting?
I think I like some of the ideas for promotion. I'm really excited.
What we're going to be doing next.
Hear what other schools are doing. Yeah, my main tip is just getting with the kids. That's my favorite part of the job, and I love seeing them getting dirty in the garden, planting at school, meeting farmers, and actually having a connection with the farmers has made it a lot easier for us than just working with I don't know who out there. So yeah, making those real life connections.
And I love Lexi. You bet. And there's one more question, so don't go away yet. We have just a little bit more. You mentioned bottom-up education, working with the kids, and then they'll go out and educate their parents. So that was really great. Katie, a takeaway from today or another tip to share? And again, we have one more question, so hang in there.
Just make sure you kind of like look at your resources that are around you and who can support you, and know that, you know, none of us are stealing each other's customers. So reach out to any of us. I know I reach out to Greeley all the time with farm to school stuff, especially when I started with doing bids and all of that good stuff. So,
Awesome.
you know, we're always here to help each other. So don't ever feel like you're doing this alone.
Great tips. Krista.
Yeah, I would say, you know, just to tag on to that, that there's so much information available now to help people with their farm to school programs that, you know, reaching out and not being able to be, you know, not being afraid to ask for help. And I just have to say that this has been an extremely challenging year, and we did some farm to school in the beginning of the year and it all sort of went to the wayside. So it's been kind of nice to hear from other people what they've been doing and sort of reinvigorate you to think, oh yeah, this is something I want to keep doing. And, you know, I mean, it takes a lot of effort and this year's just been so hard. So it's been, you know, fun for me to participate in this and hear from other people and all the great things and be remotivated to keep going.
Thank you, Kristen. I think everybody on some level was afraid to be on this call because we're like, we're not doing farm to school like we used to, and we hope to get back into it. So thank you for your transparency. I think everyone felt a little nervous about that, but it is something I think we're all excited to see happen again. Rebecca.
I would say just, you know, try to make sure that you have as much buy-in in the kitchens as possible, because they are the people who are in front of the kids the most. And, you know, if we have buy-in in the kitchens and they're talking it up and getting super excited about the local foods, I think the kids will be too. And you know, this might be very much a thing for the larger medium-sized districts. You know, I can't get out, lots of us can't get out, you know, to our kitchens every day because we have so many. So, you know, the buy-in in the kitchens from our kitchen teams is really, really important. And they're usually totally on board with doing all the promotion and excitement possible.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And Jess, I'm just going to jump into the don't go it alone, and we'll come back to the culinary if that's okay, because I think it'll help the flow just a little bit. So quickly, we know that there's people in your school that can help you. And who can help you? Who's your best resource? You don't have to do this by yourself. We've got Logan, you know, and Greeley, who's great. We've got the dietetic interns. You know, who's somebody that you can rely on or look to possibly be of support with your promotions if you don't think you have anybody? Krista.
Well, I use our public information officer a lot to help get information out, and she has the relationships developed with local media, radio, print. So it's really easy for her to reach out to those people when we're doing an event to get them to show up. So I rely on her a lot. And the other one would be our school administrators, our principals, and getting them on board to do events in their building. Of course, this is all pre and post COVID, but
Right.
getting them on board to bring farmers in or whatever event we want to do in their building and getting them involved and getting word out to their families, and they can be a huge supporter.
Fabulous. Katie.
School secretaries, I promise you, they are always wanting something to put in their weekly newsletter that they don't have to think about. And they're also, in front of parents and kids more so than even our lunch staff is sometimes. So getting them on board can kind of get the rest of the school on board as well.
Fabulous. Good idea. And parent volunteers can sometimes be great too. PTAs, PTOs, they might be eager to help you as well. Lexi.
I'm going to say it again, kiddos, but also we have a communications and events manager who is our number one person when I go to whenever I need anything sent out to the school, as well as our office manager who is more or less our secretary, echoing Katie again. And then the last one I'm going to say is if in your town there's any food security or food system work or a food hub, someone said they partnered with the food hub, they're going to promote your program. They're going to team with you if you need to meet quantities, which is not a huge problem for the big schools, but for the little guys out there, meeting quantities is huge. And they'll help promote you. They'll help team up with you. And so those are our biggest connections.
Fantastic. Those are all super tips and really reflect the diversity of this group of panelists and all the different ideas and thoughts and experiences you bring to this. So we're really, really grateful to you for what you've offered and presented. And we're grateful for our attendees for being on and listening and caring about this really important topic of getting kids healthy food and just making sure that they know what it is and where it's from and that they love it and making sure that their parents know about it. So I'm going to turn it back to Jess. She's wrapping it up. We're doing a little bit of an abbreviated version because we got a little bit long. So Jess, I'll let you take it over from here.
Yes, thank you, Rainey. It tends to happen. We're like 1 hour and then we always have so many good topics and we usually run about 3 to 4 minutes over. So we're working on it. So I do want to quickly share. I'll share the closing video at the end for those of you who want to stay on and watch the wrap up for the leafy greens. But I do want to call out that we have USDA's Farm to Summer Week Challenge is happening from June 11th to June 17th. So there is a pledge that you can take. I'll link into that and I'll share that as well afterwards because I don't think the linking is working right now for me as I'm talking. So that is great. And there's an opportunity to win the USDA's Turn Up the Beat Award through this Farm to Summer Week Challenge. So worth it, especially for those of the panelists on the call who are already doing a lot of promotional efforts. This is a great way to continue highlighting your program. And of course, I always like to have you all save the date for the future calls that we're doing. The next one is June 29th, and we're going to be talking all about the different players within this farm to school system, including yourselves, how you fit in, how you contribute, and starting to develop the framework behind almost like an elevator pitch. So when you're out there in the community, you have some really good, key, strong talking points to continue to reinforce your role and how important it is to supporting this farm to school journey that we are participating in together. So I'm going to share Chef Fernando's closing video for you all, recognizing everybody's time. If you have to jump off, that is perfectly okay. And I thank you all so very much for joining. Check out the video if you want, and then I'll stop sharing once the video is over and say my final thanks. And I have to jump onto another call as well. So I'll put this on, stop sharing my screen, and share that final video so you can see all the other ways that you can use your leafy greens.
What we're going to be doing next is sharing with you some ideas on how to use your greens in other dishes besides salads. Nothing wrong with salads. I love salads, but there are so many other dishes that you can use your greens in. So let's take a look as to what we have in store for you. I hope you got a lot of ideas and you're ready to start eating more greens. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Rebecca, Katie, Lexi, Krista. So appreciate having you on. You guys were fantastic. And thanks to all of our attendees who joined us today too.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Joey.
Thank you, Rainey.
Thank you, Jess.